Hi, this is Dr. Karen Wilson Starks, your host for the Voice of Leadership, the show for business executives and global corporations who appreciate a principled biblical lens on leadership, featuring the song Consuming Fire by gospel jazz saxophonist Ron McMillan. You are listening to our Resource Renewal Series featuring shows for times such as these. Today I'm starting actually an 8-episode series about my book, Lead Yourself First, the Senior Leader's Guide to Engaging Your People for Greater Performance and Impact. So today on episode 1, I'd really like to talk a little bit about what I even mean by the concept of lead yourself first. First of all, if you are a leader, you have to be willing to step out there first and model the way. If you're asking other people to do difficult tasks and to stretch themselves, then you must stretch yourself first and do something difficult on the front end. One example of this that I think about from history would be even Jesus Christ. One of the things that Jesus Christ knew is that he was going to die, and he knew that most of his earlier followers, the apostles, were also going to have the life of a martyr. So what he did is he taught them, he prepared them, he strengthened them, and he was the first one to go to the cross. That way, you see, he was not asking them to do anything that he wasn't willing to do himself, and in fact did do himself. So the reason I really wrote this book was I wanted people to think about the fact that they themselves are the instrument. You, in other words, are the instrument of your leadership. You're here to make a significant difference. You're here to make a contribution, and you're really leading from who you are, from the inside out. So what's my hope for you? My hope is that from this book, you will get some inspiration for your own journey, ideas about how to leverage your life experiences to lead more effectively. We all have life experiences, but the key is to learn from them, to leverage them, and to use them going forward. So not just about the past, but about going forward. So the bottom line is, from the book, hopefully you'll think of yourself as that musical instrument where you're tuning up to play the music that only you can play. That's what Lead Yourself First is all about. So at the time that I am recording this episode, it's been about a year since I actually launched my book, Lead Yourself First. And what I want to share with you is what I've learned and what I've experienced over that year. First of all, my clients who have read the book, what they're saying is that they've really appreciated the personal nature of the book. The fact that I'm telling personal stories from my life, that I'm being vulnerable and authentic, and they have a deeper appreciation and sense of where I'm coming from in my history, which also is kind of like a role model for how they can lead with their own teams. What's the value and benefit of really walking your own talk by being authentic, by being vulnerable, and by being the real you and leveraging your own life lessons. So that's what my current clients are saying. Something else, a second thing that I've been learning in this last year is that people are seeing this book as a great vehicle for young people who haven't yet launched their careers. Maybe it's someone who's in college, maybe a senior and mature high school student, just giving them a picture of what's possible and what they could begin to do and could begin to leverage. And in fact, it reminds me of something that I've often said, which is, if I could start my business over again, I would love to have some tools in advance so I could build it right from the start. And sometimes I have often found myself sort of like building the plane as it's flying. And so I think for the younger people, they have an opportunity to say, how might I want to set some things up? What do I want to focus on and think about in myself before I actually get out there and moving in a direction that may have me take the long way around, the mountain? And then the third piece I would say that I've learned is for those who are already in the workplace, whether my clients or not, the feedback I've gotten from them is that the life lessons that I summarize at the end of each chapter and also the reflection questions are really helping them to take a look at their options in the workplace right now and in their current jobs and giving them some forward momentum, or as I would say, to think about what they can do from their own chair. And that's an important leadership concept. You always have to think about what can I do from my chair. So the more mature are actually using the book in that way. Here's what I invite you to do. I invite you, if you have not yet purchased a copy of the book for yourself, then please go to Amazon.com and get your own copy. Secondly, thinking about others. I want you to think about at least 10 other people in your life who could benefit from this resource. It could be someone who's on your work team at work, the people who are your direct reports, maybe a boss, maybe some peers. Maybe we're talking about nieces, nephews, your adult children in the workplace, grandchildren. Anyway, the point is, who can you bless with this information? So think of at least 10 people and purchase some copies for them as well. Thanks again for listening to episode 1, and stay tuned for the rest of the series on Lead Yourself First. Hi, it's Dr. Karen here today, and I want to tell you a little bit about Spirit Wings Kids Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and it's an organization that provides profound services for orphans and for widows and families across the globe in many ways, and especially in the country of Uganda. So today I'm speaking with Donna Johnson, who is the founder of Spirit Wings Kids and also a board member. Donna, tell us about some example of the profound work that you're doing in Uganda.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Karen. We were just there a few weeks ago, and it's incredible. It's more than an orphanage. We have a soccer academy that keeps the boys off the street. We have a widows program that matches them with children. And it's just a thriving network of really entrepreneurs. And it's just been such a meaningful blessing to see the work that we're doing there.
You know what, Donna, what I love about what you said just now is you're really talking about their whole lives. You're creating families between the widows and the children. And you're also making sure they have recreation and something to do with the soccer academy. And you're looking at the job situation and the entrepreneurial aspect. And as a businesswoman yourself who's very successful, you're right in line with being able to make that difference. Thank you so much for the difference that you're making. And I'm inviting everyone who's watching and listening today to go to swkids.foundation and donate now. 100% of everything you donate goes to those people who are in need and who are receiving those services. Thank you so much for donating. And Donna, thank you for this ministry. I thought it might be helpful to identify 5 mindsets for executive success. So I'd like to roll those out to you, and hopefully you can apply them to yourself and to your business and get aligned right now, early in the year. So, number 1, as far as the mindset, is the ability to look and see over the horizon. So, executive leaders, not only do you have to pay attention to what you're doing today, you also have to scout out the environment, look around, and find new opportunities. In addition, you have to identify and address threats either to the current way things are being done or to the future that you're seeing and building. and identifying. Now, those leaders who are only able to look at today, they might be appropriate assets to have on your team because you need some people who can manage the day to day, if you will. However, if you're in an executive role, that visionary piece of also being able to look out into the future, to imagine what's needed, and to create that before it's needed is an important executive mindset ability. So that's number one, ability to see over the horizon. And in order to see over the horizon, you have to be willing to look over the horizon. Number two is an openness to new ideas and new perspectives. So, in order to see what's out there over the horizon, that means you are seeking new ideas from everywhere, including unlikely sources. Even in your organization, the person who's the janitor may have something very much of value to share. And so often, we don't include people who we think may not have a perspective. You want perspectives and vantage points and different lenses from every level in your organization. And it's that collective vision that's going to help you to see what others don't see. So, in this openness to new ideas and perspectives, it's important to seek what I call new people, new places, and new perspectives. The three P's: people, places, and perspectives. Then, number three, I would say, is value and practice 360 communication. That means communicating in multiple ways and in multiple directions to multiple stakeholders. In other words, it's not enough to keep all of the ideas within the executive team. You want to spread widely what it is that you're thinking about, what this company is about, and what you are doing. And not just in one medium. Sometimes I'll be working with an executive who's really much more of an introvert by personality, and they think that all they have to do is send out a few emails here and there. Well, first of all, not everybody reads emails. And secondly, that's not the best medium for every type of personality. You may have some extroverted people who might want to hear your voice in a town hall. Perhaps you may want to communicate in small groups, visit teams, talk to people in their work setting, on the shop floor, in the operating room, or wherever it is, in the branch of your bank. So the point is, you are practicing communication everywhere, not just one medium, one place, or not just one time. Some messages have to be repeated over and over in order for people to really get them. And then number four, as far as that executive success mindset, is have the desire to win. The desire to win more than a desire to keep from losing. Too often, I run into executives who are so busy trying to make sure that they don't lose, they're almost like a headwind to a wonderful airplane that's flying fast and furious through the air. And instead of giving yourself a tailwind so that you have an advantage, you give yourself a headwind because you're focusing more on losing than on winning. So, an executive mindset for success plays to win. And what you want to put in place are the winning strategies. You don't focus on losing. Whenever you focus on losing, it reminds me of when I was a little girl. I used to be sometimes a little bit clumsy, and I might be carrying a glass of water, and my mother would say, "Don't drop that, don't drop that." The more I focused on that glass and looked at that glass and focused on not dropping it, I was far more likely to drop and break the glass. It would have been more productive for me to focus on getting the glass to its destination. That's focusing on winning. And as an executive, that's the mindset that your organization needs to see and hear from you. What are we going to do collectively as a company to win? And then number 5 is the executive success mindset includes valuing working with and through others. So as the executive leader, you're setting tone and direction, and you're ensuring that there's a collective vision and buy-in to what's going on. However, you cannot do everything that needs to be done. You've got a whole team of people who are eyes and ears and feet and hands in your organization to do the work. It's really recognizing that when you're that executive, you are leading groups of high performance teams in your organization. And it's those high performance teams that are doing the work. And those executive leaders who try to do it themselves, they end up having talented people standing around, not doing work, being underemployed, and some people really feeling bored and disenfranchised. And you might start losing some of your star players because there's really nothing for them to do or nothing for them to contribute. And because you're only one person, you can't do but so much. You won't get as far. And again, you become the headwind that's holding down your fast moving airplane in your organization. So these are 5 executive success mindsets to take. That is, that ability to look and see over the horizon, number 1. Number 2, the willingness and mindset to be open to new ideas and perspectives and to seek them out. Number 3, to value and practice 360 communication. Number 4, the desire to win and to adopt a play to win mindset. And number 5, to value working with and through others. And if you really want a really good example of that, listen to my next podcast that's all about Tiger Woods and the American team winning the President's Cup. That's a great example of teamwork in action. So join me next time to hear those specifics. In the meantime, you be a great team leader and player for your business. If you've been following me, then you know we talked about the Chilean mining incident, and we talked about it in the context of what did the government do that was effective in the crisis, and also what the mining company did that was ineffective in the crisis. Well, today we're really going to talk about the miners themselves, and we're going to talk about the leadership and the teamwork that they put together in the mine in order to survive. And in case you don't remember, they were trapped for about 69 days. And just to paint a picture, I want you to understand that they are a long way underground, trapped underground in this mine in pitch black darkness. It was very hot, and they had limited food and water. And you can imagine that after 69 days without the light of day, without water, and the proper way to take care of yourself, the smell was also probably not very pleasant at the time. Nevertheless, they did some things while trapped that I think are worth us paying attention to. First of all, they organized themselves. And one good reason to organize yourself is because it'll give you something to do, and it helps you to remember that you don't plan to be there forever. You're planning to get out, and it can remind you that there is the possibility and the option of getting out of this trapped position. Number 2, they actually made some pledges to each other. They pledged teamwork. They pledged the one-man vote, so one person wasn't going to be able to strong-arm the whole group, but each person had a voice, each person had a vote. And even given your position, your vote didn't outweigh someone else's vote because you might have had a higher position. And they pledged unity and solidarity in this situation. And that unity and solidarity even included the old adage of what goes on the road stays on the road. And we'll say a little bit more about that later. Number three, the older men also helped the younger. And I want you to think the older men had a lot more experience. Perhaps they had been in smaller mining accidents or scenarios before, and they, through their wisdom, were able to keep hope alive with the younger generation. Number four, they assigned three men as scouts to kind of go around in the area where they were to find out what resources they had, what was available, and what their options were. And five, they made detailed maps of their environment. Now, keep in mind, the maps not only for their use, also for those who were attempting to rescue them. Now, there were a number of roles, number six, that they assigned while trapped in the mine. Some of those roles were expected and some were unexpected in terms of what you think they might do. So I'm going to start with what I'd call the expected roles first. They had a medic. Now, clearly, you want to assign someone to be in charge of minor injuries that have occurred and maybe treating those as best you can. So that makes sense. They also had a communication specialist. Since they knew that people were trying to locate them, they had to be able to communicate and send messages up from time to time or be able to speak out loud in a way that they could at times be heard. So they had a communication specialist. They also had a religious leader and a pastor. The pastor's role was to provide daily prayers for the men while they were down there. So those are some of the expected roles you could think might emerge in a situation like this. In addition to those roles, they also had a videographer who was recording their experiences and some of what was happening to them, that they could send some of those video footage above ground as well. And they assigned a person to be the host of the video post. So they were, in essence, they had a little show going down there that was designed as part of the communication plan to keep people informed both then and later. And they assigned a biographer to also capture what was going on with them. And then the most unusual, unexpected role, at least for me, was they even had a poet. That's amazing that in a situation like this, you would even assign a poet. To me, this shows tremendous understanding of human nature, that as people, we are multifaceted, and each part of the person has got to be fed and sustained in order to thrive under such adverse conditions and to live through it to see the light of day. It was quite valuable for them to keep busy, to keep a future focus, to be thinking about when they would leave, when they would get out, maintaining hope of being rescued. Imagine if it had only been 3 days, you'd say, oh, okay, somebody's probably going to get us. After 69 days, your mind could start to play tricks on you, and you could think maybe we're never getting out of here. However, what they did in their leadership and their organization kept that hope alive. They also worked cooperatively so that no one was isolated. And working cooperatively, each person can assess where a team member might be mentally, psychologically, spiritually, on a whole lot of different dimensions, physically, and intervene early. And then, as I mentioned earlier about what goes on the road stays on the road, we don't know exactly everything that happened while they were in that mine. 33 men trapped in a very, very small area that was a difficult area. You can imagine that psychologically, this would be difficult to sustain over a long period of time. It's quite likely that there were some days where everyone was not at their best. And so they also covenanted and agreed to maintain some confidences about some of the things that may have happened there. Maybe somebody didn't show up at their best, and they would be embarrassed to have that talked about later above ground. And so they just said, what happened in the mind stays in the mind. And sometimes that's the best way that we can honor people, is to protect their integrity in those ways when they're not showing up at their best. and the circumstances are hard and very difficult. It's really easy to be a leader when things are going well. You might think that you're the greatest ship captain in the world when the seas are calm and the winds are not high. However, when the rough waters come, that's when you're really tested as a ship's captain. And that's when you get to see if you really know what you're doing. I'm remembering back some years ago when I was doing some work with some venture capital organizations, venture capital leaders. And during part of that time, life was pretty easy. You could do almost anything and make money. However, then business got a little bit harder. And those who may have thought they were great venture capital leaders learned that there was something that maybe they needed to learn more of in order to be successful during the tougher times or the rougher seas. So here's what I know. It's very important to groom yourself and get prepared for that rough water. Those miners who were trapped in the mine had been developing their leadership in a variety of contexts long before they found themselves deep in the underground mine. And as a leader, you want to groom and prepare yourself long before the rough water comes. So I invite you to contact me, talk to me, and I am very happy to show you some successful ways to groom yourself and get ready for what those rough waters might look like in your industry. We live in a world with so many divides between groups of people. And today I am with Dr. Clarence Schuler, the president and CEO of Building Lasting Relationships. Dr. Schuler knows that cross-cultural friendships are part of the necessary healing journey. So, Dr. Schuler, tell us more about the power of cross-cultural friendships.
Well, Dr. Karen, I'd love to do that. And maybe the most important relationship, or one of the most important relationships we can build, are cross-cultural friendships. And the reason, because we have so much racial tension. And we found that if people from different cultures become friends, it actually lowers the racial tension in America. Dr. Gary Chapman, the author of the 5 Love Languages, the New York Times bestselling author, and I have written this book, this resource called Life-Changing Cross-Cultural Friendships, how you can help heal racial divides one relationship at a time. And we believe if people would get that book and read it with a friend and talk about it, or make a cross-cultural friend and read through the book together, it can change lives forever and change the racial tension in America and make it a better one. So that's really our goal with that resource.
Thank you so much, Dr. Schuler, for sharing that. And for those of you out there, if you would like to donate and contribute to creating cross-cultural friendships in our world, go to clarenceschuler.com and make sure you pick up a copy of the book for yourself and start a new cross-cultural friendship today. Today, I want to talk about leading through tough times. And there are 12 executive actions that you can take as the executive leader. So let's talk about those a little bit. Tough times come and go. This is an ability and a skill that you want to have sharpened and ready to pull out at any time, because at any time there could be a tough time. So number one is to communicate with your organization regularly. When times are tough, people need to hear from you more, not less. And a lot of times, leaders think they need to go into the hallowed halls of the board meeting and hunker down and come up with plans all by themselves. However, the best leadership you can offer during times of difficulty is to be visible, to be seen. People want to hear your voice. They want to hear the reassuring message of hope. So when you're there, you're not saying the sky is falling, but there's certain messages that you are leaving with your organization that helps them to stay inspired and hopeful that they will be able to walk through these tough times and get to the other end. And so just remember, just like with any other relationship, you don't speak to the person once a year. You're going to speak regularly and even more frequently when there's challenge. So imagine if you were walking in the dark with someone and you were leading them through the dark. You would have to communicate a lot more than if the lights were on and they could see you, because they want to be reassured of your presence and that you're still there. So that's number one. Communicate with your organization regularly. Make that message one that is filled with hope and inspiration and positivity. Number two, you want to call out strengths, abilities, talents of your organization. What are your signature strengths? What is it that's made you effective and continues to make you effective as an organization? For example, maybe you are a key player in your industry because people know that they can rely on you, and no matter the odds, you will get the job done. And maybe that's your reputation out there. So you want to call the organization into that strength and say, we've always been the organization who is going to figure out a way to get it done. And even if we can't see all of the parts of how to do that now, we're going to continue to be that way. We're going to continue to be the ones who figure that out. You want to call out those strengths, because in a time of difficulty or panic, people sometimes forget the strengths that they have. Number three, you want to remind the organization of previous storms that you've weathered. What have you already come through? And a little bit about how you came through those storms. If your company's been in business for any length of time, such as mine, there will be many storms. I can talk about how we came through the recession of 2008, how we came through 9/11, or various other crises. Now, let's say your business is newer. Maybe you haven't come through any crises yet. If that's the case, you know that individuals in your organization have personally weathered storms, and you want to solicit and tell those stories to one another, because each individual who's there is bringing that strength to the collective organization as well. So you want to tell those success stories of how we got through the storm and came out on the other end. So if you have organizational stories, definitely tell those. If not, then tell individual ones of the same. Number four, you want to remain focused on your mission and how, as an organization, you're going to meet that mission. There can be so many distractions swirling around you during a time of toughness or a time of crisis. So you want to keep that laser focus point to say, we're here to do this particular job. This is how we're going to serve the community that we're called to serve. These are the resources that we have to serve that community. And maybe we're in a resource constrained environment. And here's how we're going to use the resources that we do have. We're going to put a lot of effort and energy here. We're going to do this, that, or the other. Be intentional and talk about it. Talk about how you're going to continue to do your work. Number five, I would say, to identify ways in which you're already prepared. How you're going to use that preparedness in some novel ways. Let's say, for example, you are a restaurant and it's during the coronavirus period, and the authorities have said you've got to close down. Well, you still know how to cook food, and maybe you have never done carry out in your life. Maybe you've never had people come to the restaurant carrying things out. You can use your existing skill to do something new that you've never done before. And so you want to say, here's our preparation, and here's how we can tweak that to show up in a new way. Number six is you want to be positive and to encourage people. Many things will seem to be going wrong. However, as the executive leader, you want to identify what's going right, and you want to tell people about what's going right to encourage them, to let them know we are doing some things well, we are moving forward, and it actually inspires the energy and the momentum necessary to do more things right. It doesn't mean that you're not addressing problem areas. You are addressing them. However, your focus is on doing what's right. 7, I would say remain calm. And this is huge. There is a contagion effect in terms of the emotions that are transmitted in an organization. And as the executive leader, people are looking to you. So if you look as if we're about to die any second from now, and you are not remaining calm, then your organization is not going to be calm either. And when you're not calm, it constricts your creativity and your ability to think of the next best step. So if you've got to do some extra things like spend some time in prayer, spend some time in meditation, do some deep breathing to stay in a calm state, you want to do that because you want your people to remain in their best state for moving forward productively. Number 8 is remember you can learn from other leaders. Other people are walking through tough times or have walked through tough times. So look around you for these exemplars and these others who are doing great things. For example, during the coronavirus epidemic, I know that companies are putting out messaging to their employees and also to their customers. Well, some are doing a really great job. See what other companies are saying, see what they're putting out, and maybe you could modify some of that messaging for your own organization. Number 9, remember you've got great talent within your organization. Therefore, you can innovate and co create together. It means bringing people together and capitalizing on that collective intelligence and that collective wisdom. So just remember, you've hired these people for a reason. Not only do they have a specific skill set, they bring intelligence, they bring life experience, and that can be combined in new ways and it can be mined for a greater impact going forward. And number 10, if you find, let's say, you might not have as much work at a given time as you usually have, that's a great time to do some internal maintenance, to patch the sails of the ship, and to prepare for tomorrow. A lot of times we're running so fast and furious, we don't have time to patch the little small minor holes in the sails. But when you're sitting there waiting for something else to come along, and of course, you're also creating the next something else to come along, do some maintenance. Get ready, patch the sails. And then number 11 would be you want to always be able to see past the current crisis and to talk about the daylight that's on the other side of the storm. So, as an executive leader, you're the one who's setting that vision, who's looking past the storm and communicating to the organization, we are going to get through the storm. We're going to ride and sail our ship to the other side. Somebody's got to paint that picture. And if I think about even the words of Viktor Frankl, when he talks about a man's search for meaning, and he talked about what it was like to survive in a concentration camp, you had to be able to imagine yourself on the other side of that crisis. And it's not always going to be like this. And then number 12, be willing to get professional help, to bring in trusted advisors as your thought partners, and to help you see gold in your organization that you may not know is there or that's available to be mined. I put out the invitation to you as you're leading through these tough times and you want to have a trusted advisor to walk through these times with you, help you to regain perspective and to think about what your next great opportunity is and what is positive, even in the storm, then please contact me and we will work together. Hi, it's Dr. Karen here, reminding you that change is very challenging and difficult, even under the best of circumstances. If you are going through an organizational change, it goes better when you know the steps, the order of the steps, and what to do. So contact me to walk through what will work best for your organization. I can be reached at Dr. Dr. Period Karen, Karen, at transleadership.com. We are in a different world because of the pandemic. So, what you did yesterday may not be enough and may not work at all. And in fact, reinvention is necessary, and reinvention requires openness to new ways and new methods. The question that you want to ask, number one, is how can I best serve my customer now? I have some clients who previously were against having employees work remotely. Because of the pandemic, they've had no choice but to work remotely. And that's led to some new learning. What they have discovered and identified is that remote work is working. And for some, it's even better. In another case, there's a high end ladies' boutique where I like to shop. And this boutique really doesn't like to do selling online. Their approach is that each person would have their own personal sales associate and that you come in person to the boutique store. And most of these stores, except for the one in New York City, have a tendency to close early. So very often I do a lot of my shopping when I'm in New York City. And maybe once a year, they might actually promote something online. Well, once the pandemic started, obviously this business model was not going to be very effective because there was no way that people could go to the boutique stores. So they started sending some generic emails and then also targeted emails where the sales associates who knew me, and I have some relationship with people in different cities, they would send targeted emails, targeted text messages showing what was available. So, though I couldn't go to the store, they then, in a very smart way, brought the store to me. And it allowed me to actually fill in a couple of holes in my wardrobe where I needed to add a few pieces. So I was able to make some purchases. So this was another example of reinvention. And so you want to ask that question, how can I best serve my customers now and in the current climate? Number two, ask yourselves, how can we be more creative to serve better? And this is going to require brainstorming in house and considering all ideas. And you might even think about brainstorming with some of your customers or some of your clients and some of your constituent groups out there. They will often tell you what they want and what they're looking for. You don't have to guess all by yourself. So that brings to number three, ask your clients what they want. So in this example, one of the banks that I use had a tendency to suddenly change their hours without informing anyone. And as a business person, I'm moving money around all the time and doing different things. And for the bank to suddenly be closed early when I'm expecting the bank to be open to a certain time was very inconvenient, very annoying. And I was extremely upset about that. If I'm showing up at a time that I think the bank should be open and now it's closed. So they sent out surveys to find out, what our concerns were. And I let them know that I really didn't appreciate the fact that they would just close willy-nilly without informing people. And so, unbeknownst to me, they actually took the survey feedback very seriously. And the next thing I know, I started getting personal phone calls whenever the bank hours were changed. And when I went to the bank, my banker said to me, Dr. Wilson Starks, we just want to make sure that you've been getting our messages and that you know what we're doing. And I've said, oh, yes, I've been receiving those messages. And thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. That's what business is all about. It's about being responsive, it's about being agile, it's about listening, it's about paying attention and being willing to shift and change with the times. So here are the takeaway points that I want you to remember. Number one, what you did yesterday may not be enough and may not work well at all. Keep that in mind. Secondly, you want to remember how you can best serve your customers and clients at this time. And that may mean doing things radically different from how you've done them in the past. And in fact, it may mean offering your services in a way that you said you were not going to offer them in the past. And maybe doing some things that you thought weren't the right thing to do in the previous world. So here's your homework. Your homework is to think about what reinvention is required in your business. What is something that you're going to change from how you did it yesterday? And what are you going to do differently to really serve your customer in the best way? That's your homework. And always remember that I am standing by to work with you to make sure that you get an A plus plus on your homework. So please feel free to give me a call and we can talk about your unique situation and what reinvention looks like for you. In this environment of rapid change in the workplace, agile leadership becomes even more important than it was, let's say, 30 or 40 years ago. So let's talk a little bit about agile organizations. Number one, they have a very strong learning emphasis and a learning culture. With business changing so rapidly, you have to stop and capture those learnings as they're flying by because you want to apply the learnings to your current situation and use those as stepping stones to advance forward. So strong learning orientation is key in agile organizations. Secondly, those agile organizations are known for rapid data acquisition and then action on that data. So that means that regularly you have to be collecting data. You have to be finding ways to figure out what's going on. What's going on with your customers? What's going on internally? What's going on out there with your industry in general? And that means bringing together different voices than who you normally might hear from so that you have some diverse perspectives, collaborating with other people so that you come up with, now that we have this data, what's an action that we can take that makes sense and that advances us forward. If you only have the same minds and voices in there, you might not think of that unusual action or next step that can come from the data that you've collected. So, in the spirit of learning, you want other collaborators, other diverse people around the table to help with that rapid development process. And so this means that you're not just waiting to adapt in an organization, which can be a longer term strategy. You are instantaneously taking the insights and the learnings that you're gathering and you're making fine tuned adjustments almost daily. That's very nimble to adjust daily as opposed to maybe change something once a year or once every 5 years. So, agile organizations are constantly turning and adjusting the dials. Now, you might wonder, well, what does this have to do with my business benefits? Well, the research shows that companies that are the fastest growing companies are companies that have 30% or more of agile leaders. We find that companies who are performing better financially, they have 5.8 times more agile leaders. They're more likely to have more agile leaders than others. Now, some of my clients are in the banking industry. And the banking industry is one that is really changing at the speed of light. There's so many opportunities coming in as a result of automation, and automation is revolutionizing how banking is done. There used to be a time that if you wanted to deposit funds, if you wanted to move money around, you had to go to the bank and you had to get there before 2 p.m. in order to get anything done. You can actually move money from accounts online now. You can do all kinds of things. You can use an ATM to deposit something after hours. There's so many differences in what's happening in the banking industry, far beyond what I'm talking about. Ways you can use your handheld phone device to run almost everything you want to run from your bank. And again, never set foot in there if you choose not to. So that's an industry that is actually seeking and developing agile leaders because the market demands require that. Here's the thing I want you to remember and to keep in mind. If you attract agile leaders, those leaders need an agile organization. That means if you are not already an agile organization, then you have to become that or risk losing those agile employees and leaders to another organization that's more agile ready. What I'd love to do is to hear more from you about what you're doing out there. Send me an email or a message and let me know what you're doing to increase agility. How are you making this work? How are you being successful? What are your best practices? And tell a friend about the podcast. Let other people know that here's a place where they can hear an idea or two that they can implement right away. Hi, it's Dr. Karen here, and I want to tell you about my book, which is called Lead Yourself First, the Senior Leader's Guide to Engaging Your People for Greater Performance and Impact. It's a book to inspire you about the challenges that you have overcome and the vision that you've realized in your life. It's from these struggles, triumphs, and temporary setbacks that others will be inspired and that they will have the courage to lead themselves first and also to lead others. In the first chapter, which is called Envision the Future, I talk about the rocky education path that I had to forge and overcome to realize my vision to become a psychologist. And that was all the way from elementary school straight through graduate school. There were obstacles. The path wasn't easy. And yet, entering graduate school with only $30 in the bank, I ended up finishing graduate school with no debts. When you walk step by step in the vision, even when it doesn't look like where you want to be, doors open and resources come to you because you hold the vision and you keep walking. So here's what I wanted to say to you. Lead yourself first. This book will walk you through your journey as you go through the open doors and as you continue to walk, just like I walked through mine. So get your copy of Lead Yourself First. Hold the vision for yourself and your life and be successful. Thank you for listening to The Voice of Leadership with me, Dr. Karen Wilson Starks. I am also your concierge executive leadership advisor for when you need to make tough business decisions, facilitate executive succession and transition, develop your executive team, lead change, create a positive and profitable culture, or leverage marketplace creative advantage. You can reach me at Dr. Karen, Karen, at transleadership.com. Also go to my website, transleadership.com, for more leadership resources and insights. I want to give special thanks to Ron McMullen, gospel jazz saxophonist and national Billboard recording artist, also known as Mr. Sirius XM Jazz Watercolors, for allowing us to use his gifted music on our show. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.